The morning sun was just beginning to warm the autumn air as Staff Sergeant James Cooper pulled into the nearly empty parking lot of Pine Valley Dog Park. It was 6:30 a.m., his favorite time to visit. The park was peaceful at this hour, with only a handful of regular dog owners around. That's exactly how he liked it. James stepped out of his weathered blue Ford F-150, the truck he'd owned since before his first deployment. The cool morning air made his old shoulder wound ache a bit, a reminder of his last tour in Afghanistan. He walked to the passenger side and opened the door for Rex, his loyal German shepherd. The dog jumped down gracefully, his black and tan coat gleaming in the early morning light. "Easy, buddy," James said softly as Rex sat perfectly still, waiting for permission to move. The discipline was impressive, but not surprising. Rex wasn't just any dog. He was a retired military working dog who had served alongside James during his last deployment. They had saved each other's lives more than once, creating a bond that went far deeper than the usual pet-owner relationship. James took a deep breath, letting the crisp morning air fill his lungs. These morning walks had become an essential part of his routine since returning to civilian life 3 months ago. His therapist at the VA had suggested finding a peaceful morning activity to help with his PTSD, and these quiet walks with Rex had proven to be the perfect solution. The dog park was large, spanning 5 acres with separate areas for small and large dogs. James and Rex always started their morning with a walk around the perimeter fence. It was their way of checking the territory, an old habit from their military days that brought comfort to them both. The fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet as they walked, creating a rhythm that matched their steady pace. As they walked, James noticed Mrs. Chen and her poodle Ming in the small dog section. She was one of the regular morning visitors, a kind elderly woman who always had a smile and often brought homemade dog treats. She waved at them, and James nodded back with a small smile. Rex's ears perked up. He knew Mrs. Chen's treats well. On the far side of the park, Tom Martinez was throwing a frisbee for his chocolate lab. Tom was another veteran from the Gulf War era, and he and James often shared quiet conversations about their experiences. They never talked about the difficult stuff. They didn't need to. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition of the weight they both carried. James and Rex completed their perimeter walk and headed to their favorite spot, a quiet corner of the large dog section with a sturdy wooden bench. From here, they could see the entire park while staying somewhat removed from the main activity areas. James sat down, his muscles relaxing as Rex lay at his feet, alert but calm. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Rex's favorite ball, a worn tennis ball that had seen better days. Rex's eyes followed the ball, but he remained in position, waiting for permission. James smiled, remembering the months of training they'd gone through together. Rex had been just a young dog then, full of energy but showing remarkable intelligence and potential. "Okay, boy," James said quietly, and Rex immediately sat up, ready for action. James threw the ball across the empty field, and Rex took off after it, his powerful legs carrying him effortlessly across the grass. This was their morning ritual: 20 minutes of fetch, followed by some basic training exercises to keep their skills sharp. As Rex returned with the ball, James felt the familiar sense of peace washing over him. Here, in these quiet morning moments with his trusted companion, the memories of war seemed to fade a little. The nightmares that sometimes plagued his sleep felt less real. The constant alertness that had kept him alive in combat eased into a more manageable awareness of his surroundings. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the park. More people would start arriving soon, but for now, it was just James and Rex, sharing another peaceful morning together. Neither of them could have known that this ordinary morning was about to become anything but peaceful. The peaceful morning shattered at exactly 7:15 a.m. The roar of motorcycle engines echoed through the park, causing Rex's ears to prick up instantly. James watched as 3 Harley-Davidson motorcycles, their engines unnecessarily loud, pulled into the parking lot. The bikes were flashy, covered in chrome with bright custom paint jobs that screamed for attention. The riders matched their bikes perfectly. Each wore leather vests decorated with patches that James didn't recognize, but their attitude was familiar enough. He'd seen plenty of troublemakers during his time as a military police officer. The leader, a big man with a thick beard and tattooed arms, kicked his stand down and dismounted first. Behind him, a skinnier man with a shaved head and a woman with bright pink hair followed suit. What caught James's attention wasn't the bikers themselves, but what they were bringing into the park. Each of them had a pit bull, and none of the dogs were leashed. The animals were beautiful specimens, muscular and well-fed, but their aggressive posturing set off warning bells in James's mind. He worked with military dogs long enough to recognize when animals weren't properly trained. Mrs. Chen noticed the newcomers too. She quickly gathered Ming into her arms, her usual warm smile replaced with worry. The poodle, sensing the tension, started trembling. Over by the frisbee area, Tom Martinez was already clipping a leash to his chocolate lab's collar, his face grim. The bikers made no effort to follow the park's rules. Instead of heading to the large dog section, they walked straight into the small dog area, their pit bulls trotting alongside them. A young couple who had been playing with their beagle puppy hurriedly collected their things and left, throwing nervous glances over their shoulders. "Look at these fancy little rat dogs," the bearded leader said loudly, laughing as his pit bull stalked toward a frightened chihuahua. The small dog's owner, a teenage girl, scrambled to scoop up her pet before the larger dog could reach it. Tears were forming in her eyes as she rushed toward the gate. The woman with pink hair pulled out her phone, recording the chaos with a smirk on her face. Her pit bull, a white one with a brown patch over its eye, was circling Mrs. Chen's bench. The elderly woman clutched Ming tighter, her hands shaking as she tried to stand up. "What's wrong, Grandma?" the pink-haired woman called out. "Scared your little cotton ball might make a nice snack." Her companions laughed, and their dogs, picking up on the aggressive energy, became more excited. The ball biker's dog, the largest of the three, suddenly lunged at a Yorkshire Terrier that had been quietly playing in the corner. The Yorkie's owner, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, who James recognized as another regular, screamed as she tried to reach her pet in time. Rex watched all of this from his position at James's feet, his body tense but completely still. Years of training had taught him to wait for commands, no matter how chaotic the situation became. James felt his own combat-honed instincts kicking in as he observed the scene unfolding before him. Several other dog owners were already on their phones, presumably calling the police, but the nearest station was at least 15 minutes away, and a lot could happen in 15 minutes. James watched as the bikers' dogs became increasingly aggressive, feeding off their owners' encouraging laughter and taunts. The park's security camera had been broken for months, and the morning attendant wouldn't arrive for another hour. The only other man present besides James and Tom was an elderly gentleman with a walker who looked terrified as he tried to shield his small terrier from view. James knew he needed to act, but he also knew that rushing in would only make things worse. He'd handled enough volatile situations in Afghanistan to understand that timing was everything. As he watched Mrs. Chen struggling to stand with Ming in her arms, while the white pit bull circled closer, he made his decision. "Stay," he commanded Rex quietly, rising from the bench. His movement caught the attention of the bald biker, who nudged his bearded leader and pointed in James's direction. The morning sun cast long shadows across the park as James began walking toward them, his pace measured and deliberate. The peaceful morning was about to become anything but. James approached the small dog area with measured steps, his combat boots silent on the morning grass. Years of military training had taught him to evaluate threats quickly. 3 hostile individuals, 3 aggressive dogs, and multiple civilians at risk. The bearded leader watched him come, a smirk playing across his face. "Folks," James said calmly, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had once commanded troops in combat zones. "Your dogs need to be on leashes, and this area is for small dogs only." He kept his hands visible and his stance relaxed, though his muscles were ready to react if needed. The pink-haired woman laughed, still recording with her phone. "Look what we got here, a Boy Scout trying to teach us the rules." Her pit bull had stopped circling Mrs. Chen and was now focused on James, ears forward with interest. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," James continued, maintaining eye contact with the bearded leader. "But you're frightening these people and their pets. There's a large dog area right over there that would be more appropriate." He gestured to the adjacent enclosure, deliberately keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. The bald biker stepped forward, trying to use his height to intimidate James. "And what if we like it right here?" He wore steel-toed boots and had brass knuckles poorly concealed in his vest pocket, details James noted automatically from his law enforcement training. Mrs. Chen took advantage of the biker's distraction to hurry toward the gate, clutching Ming to her chest. The white pit bull noticed her movement and started to turn, but James spoke up quickly, drawing its attention back to him. "Ma'am," he called out clearly, "please wait by my truck, the blue Ford. Tom will walk you there." He saw Tom Martinez nod from the corner of his eye, understanding the tactical advantage of getting civilians to safety. The bearded leader's amusement turned to annoyance. "You giving orders in our park now, tough guy?" He stepped closer, and James could smell leather and stale cigarettes. "Maybe you didn't notice, but there's 3 of us and 1 of you." "I noticed," James replied quietly. "I also noticed your dogs aren't trained for actual confrontation. They're acting tough because you're encouraging it, but they're not properly socialized." His experienced eye had seen how the pit bulls, despite their aggressive posturing, showed signs of poor training and uncertain behavior. The bald biker's face reddened. "You calling our dogs fake?" He reached for James's shoulder, but before he could make contact, James shifted slightly, causing the man to miss his grip and stumble forward. "I'm saying," James continued as if nothing had happened, "that someone's going to get hurt if you don't get your dogs under control. Could be one of these people's pets, could be a child. I don't think any of us wants that on our conscience." The pink-haired woman lowered her phone, her smile fading as she noticed how James seemed completely unfazed by their intimidation attempts. Her pit bull, picking up on her uncertainty, began to whine softly. "You got some nerve," the bearded leader growled. There was a new note in his voice, the first hint of doubt. James's calm demeanor and professional assessment of their dogs had thrown him off balance. James kept his voice level. "Look at your white pit bull there. She's not aggressive. She's anxious. Her tail position and ear movements show fear, not dominance. You're putting her in a situation she's not trained for, and that's dangerous for everyone." The accuracy of his observation visibly startled the pink-haired woman, who glanced at her dog with new concern. The animal was indeed showing signs of stress, pacing and licking its lips nervously. "Who the hell are you anyway?" the bald biker demanded, trying to regain control of the situation. His hand was drifting toward his vest pocket with the brass knuckles. James noticed the movement but didn't react to it. Instead, he looked steadily at the bearded leader. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Leash your dogs and move them to the appropriate area, or we're going to have a problem. Your choice." The morning sun had fully risen now, highlighting the tension in the scene. 3 bikers and their dogs facing a single man who somehow made them feel like they were the ones outnumbered. Behind them, Rex remained sitting exactly where James had left him, watching everything with the focused attention of a trained military dog. A detail the bikers hadn't noticed yet, but soon would. The situation exploded when a young mother and her 5-year-old daughter entered the park, unaware of the tension. They had a small golden retriever puppy on a red leash, and the little girl was chattering happily about playing fetch. The moment the gate clicked open, all 3 pit bulls turned their heads toward the sound. James saw the danger instantly. The bald biker's dog, already the most aggressive of the 3, locked its eyes on the puppy. The little girl's happy chatter turned into a frightened gasp as the pit bull lowered its head and charged. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion to the watching crowd. James moved with the fluid precision of someone who had trained for crisis situations his entire military career. In 2 quick steps, he positioned himself between the charging dog and the frightened family. His stance was protective but not aggressive, his movements calculated and precise. "Get back to your car," he called to the mother, who scooped up her daughter and puppy in one desperate motion. The pit bull skated to a stop, confused by James's calm but commanding presence. The dog's uncertainty was exactly what James had expected. It confirmed his earlier assessment that these were poorly trained animals acting tough rather than truly dangerous dogs. "Call your dog off," James ordered the bald biker, his voice carrying the sharp crack of military authority. But the biker had other ideas. "Get him, Crusher," he yelled instead, trying to encourage his dog to attack. The pit bull, receiving mixed signals, began barking frantically, caught between its owner's commands and its instinctive response to James' authoritative presence. The bearded leader saw his chance while James was focused on the pit bull. He lunged forward, throwing a heavy punch aimed at James's head. But James hadn't survived 3 tours in combat zones by focusing on just one threat at a time. He shifted slightly, causing the punch to graze his shoulder instead of connecting with his jaw. The pink-haired woman was still filming, her hands shaking now as she captured the escalating violence. Her own dog had retreated behind her legs, while the leader's pit bull began circling wider, agitated by the growing chaos. "Last warning," James said calmly, despite the throbbing in his shoulder. "Control your dogs and leave, or this gets worse." His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes made the bearded leader take a step back. That's when the bald biker made his crucial mistake. He pulled the brass knuckles from his vest pocket, the metal glinting in the morning sun. "You don't give us warnings, tough guy," he snarled, advancing with the weapon. James had been waiting for this moment. With deliberate clarity, he spoke a single word that changed everything. "Rex." The bikers hadn't paid attention to the German shepherd sitting quietly across the park. They hadn't noticed his disciplined stillness, his focused attention, or his military training, but they noticed now. Rex covered the distance between them in seconds, moving with the control power of a trained military dog. He didn't bark or growl. He simply positioned himself beside James, his presence transforming the tactical situation instantly. All three pit bulls, recognizing a true alpha predator, backed away and lowered their heads. "That's a military working dog," James explained quietly, letting the information sink in. "He's trained to handle multiple threats, and he's wearing his service vest, which means assaulting him would be a felony." The pink-haired woman's phone dropped to her side as she finally realized what they were dealing with. The bald biker's brass knuckles suddenly felt very inadequate against a man who had clearly handled far worse situations and a dog trained for combat zones. Time seemed to freeze in that moment. The three bikers realizing they had severely miscalculated, their pit bulls showing submission to Rex's commanding presence, and James standing calmly in the center of it all, ready for whatever came next. The peaceful dog park had become a standoff, and everyone present knew that the next few seconds would determine whether this situation ended with simple surrender or serious consequences. The choice now lay with the bikers, but James already knew what they would decide. He had seen that look of dawning realization many times before, the moment when bullies suddenly understood they had picked the wrong target. The bald biker made his decision. With a snarl of frustration, he swung the brass knuckles in a wild arc toward James's face. It was the wrong move. James had spent years training soldiers in close-quarter combat, and this untrained attack was almost embarrassingly easy to read. In one fluid motion, James stepped inside the biker's reach. His left hand deflected the brass knuckles while his right hand locked onto the biker's wrist. Using his attacker's own momentum, James turned slightly, and suddenly the bald biker was flying through the air. He landed hard on his back, the brass knuckles clattering away across the concrete path. "Rex, guard," James commanded calmly. The German shepherd moved into position, keeping the other two bikers at bay without any aggressive movement. The three pit bulls, already intimidated by Rex's presence, retreated further, whining in confusion. The bearded leader reached for something in his back pocket, but James's voice stopped him. That would be a very poor decision. There was something in his tone, the kind of quiet certainty that only comes from facing real combat, that made the biker's hand freeze. The pink-haired woman had backed away, her phone still recording everything. "Deacon," she called to the bearded leader, "this guy's not playing around. Look at his stance. He's military or something." James kept his position, balanced and ready. The bald biker was trying to get up, but a firm "stay down" from James, backed by Rex's watchful presence, convinced him to remain on the ground. The morning sun cast their shadows long across the park as the standoff continued. "You're right," James said to the woman. Staff Sergeant James Cooper, 3 tours in Afghanistan, military police combat specialist. He didn't raise his voice, but his words carried clearly. "Your friend on the ground just attempted assault with a deadly weapon. That's a felony. The brass knuckles are illegal in this state. That's another charge." The bearded leader, Deacon, seemed to deflate slightly. His hand moved away from his back pocket. "We didn't mean," he started, but James cut him off. "You did mean it. You came here to intimidate people, to scare them with your dogs. That stops today." James glanced at the bald biker on the ground. "Your shoulder's going to hurt, but nothing's broken. I can help you up if you're ready to behave." Around them, the scene had changed. Tom Martinez had positioned himself near the park entrance, preventing any attempt at escape. Several police cars were visible in the distance, their sirens getting louder. The small crowd of dog owners who had taken shelter by James's truck were filming everything on their phones. The pink-haired woman was the first to show sense. She clipped a leash to her pit bull's collar, her hands shaking slightly. "Deacon," she said, "there's cops coming. We need to end this." James watched as the fight drained out of them. The bearded leader nodded slowly, then reached for his own dog's leash. "Get up slowly," James told the bald biker, "and call your dog over. Gently." The biker complied, his face red with a mixture of pain and embarrassment. His pit bull came to him immediately, tail low, sensing the change in the situation. Within moments, all three dogs were leashed. "The police will want statements," James said. "You're going to stay right here and tell them exactly what happened. And after that, you're going to find a new dog park, one far away from here." His tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Rex remained steady at James's side, his training evident in every line of his body. The German Shepherd hadn't had to do anything more than stand his ground. His presence alone, combined with James's skill, had been enough to turn the tide. The morning sun was fully up now, illuminating the scene. Three subdued bikers with their leashed dogs, a small crowd of relieved onlookers, and a soldier and his dog standing calmly in the center of it all. The sound of police sirens grew closer, but the real crisis was already over. James had handled the situation exactly as his military training had taught him. Minimum force, maximum control. Not a single punch thrown, no unnecessary violence, just precise, professional defense that left no doubt about who was in charge. 3 police cars pulled into the parking lot with their lights flashing but sirens now silent. Officer Sarah Martinez, no relation to Tom, stepped out first, her hand resting casually on her holster as she assessed the scene. What she saw wasn't what the 911 calls had described. Instead of an ongoing fight, she found an oddly peaceful tableau. A tall man in combat boots stood calmly in the center of the dog park, a German Shepherd with a service vest sitting alertly by his side. 3 rough-looking bikers were standing quietly with their leashed pit bulls, one of them rubbing his shoulder and wincing. A small crowd of dog owners waited by a blue Ford truck, many still holding their phones up to record everything. "I'm the one who handled the situation," James said as Officer Martinez approached, keeping his hands visible. "Staff Sergeant James Cooper, ma'am. I have my military ID and Rex's service dog documentation right here." He moved slowly as he reached for his wallet. The pink-haired woman stepped forward, still holding her phone. "I had the whole thing on video," she said, her voice shaky. We were the ones who started it. He just defended himself and the other people here." Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow at this voluntary confession. 2 more officers had joined her, and she gestured for them to take statements from the gathered witnesses. "Let's start from the beginning, Staff Sergeant," she said, pulling out her notebook. As James gave his statement, other officer checked the brass knuckles they found on the path. The bald biker, now identified as Mike "Snake" Peterson, was looking at serious weapons charges. His shoulder wasn't dislocated, but the paramedics who arrived recommended he get it checked at the hospital. The bearded leader, Deacon, couldn't meet anyone's eyes as he gave his statement. "We thought it would be funny," he admitted to the officer interviewing him. "Scare some people with our dogs. We didn't know he was military. Didn't know the German Shepherd was a service dog either." Mrs. Chen had returned to the scene and was telling officers how James had protected her and her poodle. Tom Martinez added his statement about James's calm handling of the situation. The young mother who'd arrived with her daughter and puppy had also returned, wanting to thank James personally. "The dogs aren't bad," James explained to Officer Martinez as she finished taking his statement. "They're just poorly trained and encouraged to act aggressive. With proper training, they could be good pets." He looked at the 3 pit bulls, who were now sitting quietly, still subdued by Rex's commanding presence. The pink-haired woman, whose name turned out to be Jenny, overheard this. She looked at her white pit bull with new eyes. Could you recommend a good trainer?" she asked James hesitantly. "I never wanted Rosie to be aggressive. We just got caught up in the whole tough image thing." James noticed her dog's ears perk up at the name Rosie. "There's a good training center run by a fellow veteran about 20 minutes from here," he said. "They specialize in rehabilitation for dogs with aggressive tendencies. I can write down the information for you." Officer Martinez watched this exchange with interest. In her 15 years on the force, she'd rarely seen a potentially violent situation resolve itself so cleanly. No serious injuries, clear video evidence, voluntary confessions, and even a possible redemption story with the dogs. The DA will want to press charges for the weapons and attempted assault, she told James. Will you be willing to testify if needed? James nodded, then turned to the three bikers. Press charges or not, I meant what I said. Find another dog park and get your dogs proper training. They deserve better than being turned into weapons for your entertainment. The morning had grown warm now. The police were finishing their reports. The paramedics had cleared the bald biker to leave with a warning about getting his shoulder checked, and the regular dog park crowd was gradually returning to their normal routines. Rex stayed by James's side through it all, professional to the core. A few of the officers, recognizing a fellow service member in James and a fellow working dog in Rex, stopped to exchange respectful nods. The park was returning to its peaceful state, though the morning's events had changed things in ways that would soon become apparent. The video of the dog park incident went viral within days. Jenny's phone recording, combined with footage from other witnesses, painted a clear picture of how one soldier's calm professionalism had prevented what could have been a tragic situation. Local news stations picked up the story, focusing on James's military background and his skilled handling of both the aggressive dogs and their owners. A week after the incident, James arrived at the park for his morning walk with Rex to find the place had changed. A new security camera system had been installed, and the city had posted a part-time security guard during peak hours. The broken gate had been fixed, and new signs clearly displayed the rules about leashing dogs and appropriate behavior. Mrs. Chen was waiting for him by his usual bench, holding a container of her homemade dog treats. "These are for Rex," she said with a warm smile. "And this," she held up a paper bag that smelled of fresh dumplings, "is for you. My grandson says you're a hero on Facebook." James accepted the food with quiet thanks, uncomfortable with the attention but unwilling to hurt the kind woman's feelings. Tom Martinez joined them, his chocolate lab wagging its tail at the sight of Rex. "The police chief called me yesterday," Tom told James as they sat on the bench. "Turns out those bikers had been causing trouble at 3 other dog parks in the county. Your video gave them enough evidence to ban the group from all city parks." The brass knuckles charge stuck too. That bald fellow is looking at community service and mandatory anger management classes. But the most surprising news came from Jenny, the pink-haired woman. She arrived at the park that morning, looking very different from the day of the incident. Gone was the tough biker outfit, replaced by simple jeans and a t-shirt. Her white pit bull, Rosie, walked calmly beside her on a leash. "I took your advice," she told James, keeping a respectful distance. "We've been going to that training center you recommended. The trainer there, the veteran you mentioned, he's helping us understand what we did wrong." She paused, watching Rosie sit quietly at her feet. "Deacon and the others think I've gone soft, but I don't care. I never wanted to be part of their intimidation games anyway." James noticed the change in Rosie's behavior immediately. The pit bull's body language was more relaxed, her eyes softer. "She's a different dog," he commented, and Jenny beamed with pride. "The trainer says she has potential to be a therapy dog," Jenny explained. "Who would have thought? The dog we were trying to make tough could end up helping people instead of scaring them." More people were gathering around them now. The young mother whose daughter and puppy had almost been attacked brought her little girl over to thank James properly. The child had drawn a picture of Rex, complete with his service vest, which James accepted gracefully. Sarah, the Yorkshire Terrier owner, had organized a petition to make the security improvements permanent. She showed James the hundreds of signatures she'd collected. "The city council is voting on it next week," she said. "Would you consider speaking at the meeting? Your military experience gives you credibility they'll respect." James wasn't used to this kind of community involvement. In the military, his job had been clear: complete the mission, protect his unit, follow orders. But here in civilian life, he was discovering a different kind of mission, helping build a safer community for everyone. Rex seemed to sense his handler's thoughtful mood. The German Shepherd pressed gently against James's leg, offering the quiet support that had helped them both through much worse situations than this. "I'll think about it," James told Sarah, watching the morning regulars return to their normal routines. Children played with their puppies in the small dog area, elderly owners chatted on benches, and dogs of all sizes enjoyed their exercise under the watchful eyes of responsible owners. The park felt different now, not just because of the new security measures, but because the incident had brought the regular visitors closer together. They looked out for each other more, shared treats and stories, and made sure everyone felt welcome and safe. The morning sun rose higher, warming the autumn air. James and Rex started their usual perimeter walk, but now they stopped more often to greet people. The soldier who had wanted nothing more than quiet morning walks was becoming, despite himself, a valued part of this small community. 1 month after the incident, Pine Valley Dog Park hosted its first community safety event. James stood near his blue Ford truck, watching as families and their pets filled the parking lot. Rex sat alertly beside him, wearing his cleaned and polished service vest. The event had been Sarah's idea, but somehow James had become central to its organization. Local police had set up a booth about pet safety laws, and a veterinarian was offering free microchipping. The veteran-owned dog training center that Jenny now attended had brought their staff to demonstrate proper handling techniques. "Look who's here," Tom Martinez said, pointing toward the entrance. Jenny walked in with Rosie, but she wasn't alone. Behind her came 2 other women with pit bulls on leashes, former members of the biker group who had followed her example. They wore the training center's volunteer shirts instead of leather vests, and their dogs walked calmly beside them. "They're part of our rehabilitation program now," Jenny told James proudly. "Rosie passed her first therapy dog evaluation yesterday. The others are working toward it too." Her white pit bull sat perfectly at her feet, a far cry from the aggressive animal she'd been a month ago. Mrs. Chen had set up a refreshment table with her famous dumplings and dog treats. She was teaching a group of children the proper way to approach and pet strange dogs, with Rex serving as the demonstration model. The German Shepherd's patience with the small hands patting him showed why he'd been such an excellent military working dog. The local news had sent a reporter, who was interviewing Officer Sarah Martinez about the changes in park security. The police officer gestured to the new cameras and the retired K-9 officer they'd hired as a part-time security guard. "Sometimes it takes one incident to bring a community together," she said into the microphone. James's VA therapist would have been proud of his progress. The quiet morning walks that had once been his solitary therapy had evolved into something larger. He was still dealing with his PTSD, but being part of this community helped. The nightmares came less frequently now. Staff Sergeant Cooper, a familiar voice called. The bald biker, Mike "Snake" Peterson, approached cautiously. He looked different in regular clothes, his shoulders still in a light brace. "Can we talk for a minute?" James nodded, and they walked to a quiet corner of the park. Rex followed at a discreet distance, maintaining his protective watch without being aggressive. "I finished those anger management classes," Mike said, looking at the ground. "The counselor there, he helped me understand some things about why I was so angry all the time." He paused, struggling with the words. "Turns out I've been dealing with some stuff since getting laid off from the factory, taking it out on everyone else." James listened quietly, recognizing the signs of a man trying to change. "It's not easy, admitting you need help," he said finally. "Takes more courage than starting fights." Mike nodded. "Jenny told me about the therapy dog program. I was thinking, maybe my pit bull could try that too, if you think we could handle it." A child's laughter rang out across the park as a puppy did tricks for treats at the training demonstration. The sound made both men turn to watch. The park was full of life, families, dogs, community members all coming together to make something positive out of what could have been a tragedy. "Come by the training center next week," James told Mike. "I've been helping out there on weekends. We'll evaluate your dog, see what we can do." The morning sun reached its peak, warming the autumn air. The event was in full swing now, with demonstrations, training sessions, and community members sharing stories and advice. Even the city council members had shown up, impressed by how the park had transformed from a trouble spot to a model of community engagement. James watched it all with quiet satisfaction. His military training had taught him to handle crisis situations, but civilian life had taught him something equally valuable: how to help build peace. Rex pressed against his leg, and James scratched his faithful companion's ears. The dog park was more than just a place to exercise pets now. It had become a symbol of how one person standing up for what's right could inspire others to change. The incident that began with bikers messing with the wrong soldier had ended by bringing out the best in an entire community.